Good afternoon. This is Joseph Donnelly from the Jersey Free Public Library, and my guest host is Lydia Dolch, who's done programs for us in the past. And my other host is Jessica Campbell, who is our social worker librarian. And we're going to talk about strategies for mental health. Take it away, Lydia.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor to be back. And I'd just like to really clarify that this is from an educational perspective. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a social worker. My background is in special education and also collaboration with lots of community services, including mental health professionals in the school setting, in the community setting, and also in residential settings. So what I know is that the more tools we have, the more able we are to adapt to situations that come up in our lives. And so as an educator, I believe it's really important to share as many tools as we can. And some of those tools are going to be very relevant to you, and some of these tools will be terrible. And some of these tools will be something that you'll say, oh, you know, I should want to do that, but that's not sustainable either, right? Part of your job as a human on this earth is to be part of this grand experiment called life. And so part of that grand experiment is trying things on for size, learning new tools, trying them out for a while, assessing whether or not it's a good fit, assessing ways to make that tool work for you in the long term, have that accountability. So today, what I'm going to do is share quite a few different tools, quite a few different strategies for supporting mental health. And again, this is definitely an add-on to any kind of mental health support you would get in the community through a psychologist, a social worker, or a psychiatrist. These are additional suggestions or just ideas, to bring to the professionals that support you in your mental health. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share.
I made you the host, and so you can
check. Wonderful. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. Hop in to these visuals to support our talk together today. Okay. So again, these are strategies to support mental health from an educational perspective. And my name is Lydia Dolch. I'm from Open the Lid. And I'm going to go ahead and just talk about this agenda for a bit. I'd like to do a little introduction, give you a little background on and how I arrived where I am with the information I have. Then we're going to talk about lots of different strategies. For example, whole foods, reduced screen time, exercise, something called forest bathing, a gratitude journal, faith practices, meditation, mantras and affirmations, something called EFT, therapy, medications, next steps, and ways to stay connected. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just start with that introduction. As I said before, have training in special education. That's what my certifications are in, as well as art education, which actually gave me tools to think outside the box, right? To see things from different perspectives. 4.5 years ago, I had a brain injury after an accident. And so I started living with sensory processing disorder. And so everything that I thought I knew about autism, about people with sensory processing disorder, was very much confirmed and added onto. I say it was the best professional development you could ever not want, because I started living this sensory life. Another huge element was that I oftentimes, and I'm just going to plug in this microphone because there's some construction noise. I don't know if you guys are picking up on. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So another element of brain injury is that you often lose new neural pathways that you've built since adolescence. So if you were very like ADHD,
and you built skills as an adult to navigate, those kind of attentional challenges, you might have lost those skills after brain injury. The same can be true for anxiety and depression. And I'm going to be vulnerable here because I think that's really important in being real. My adolescence was very, very intense and involved suicidal ideations and treatment for that through therapy, through medication, through alternate supports. And, thankfully, I navigated through that with the right supports. And then as an adult, it came all back with the head injury. And so I had to build new skills as an adult to navigate with dealing with major mental health impacts in my life. So again, best professional development I could ever not want was navigating as an adult additional resources and supports for supporting mental health for folks that I was consulting with, and also for myself, and really digging into to just gaining as many tools as I possibly could. So I'm here to share them with you today. Okay, let's just dive in. Oh, here we go. Another little just piece of the introduction is that life is truly a balancing act. And the more tools we have, the easier it is to balance. And so, watching this workshop today is a huge gift to yourself. So just take a minute, acknowledge that this is a gift, that you are adding to your toolbox, which gives you so much for yourself, but also for the people you love and support. Okay, so well done. Okay, so let's talk about eating whole foods. So the idea here is that just like you put in certain grades of gasoline into your car, you put in certain grades of nutrients into your body. So when you're putting in highly processed foods, it's like putting in gas with lots of additives. Your engine might run, but it might not run as cleanly or efficiently or as long, and it can really affect the long-term health of your engine. This really affects mental health in a surprisingly large way. There is a lot of research about the impact of sugar and of processed foods on mental health. And one reason that they're connected is that there are actually more neurotransmitters in your gut than in your brain. And so, when we talk about, I just had a gut feeling about this, or, like my stomach is sinking, there's actually a lot going on there that's affecting the rest of our body. And when we put fuel in this tank that's not ideal, it can make the rest of the system work at a lower functioning rate. This was very true for me, again, in head injury recovery, that I was just kind of eating my regular foods and having constant headaches, to the point where it's like the worst hangover you could have, plus like a dull butcher knife stuck in your head and like a screwdriver stuck in your eye socket, like for 9 months. And so one thing that really shifted that was going to just clean foods that are as close to the source as possible, the farm, right? So if you have a choice of like Cheetos or cheese, then it's the cheese, right? Because it's the closest to the farm. If it's a choice of chips or a potato, it's the potato because it's closest to the farm. If you can avoid eating foods that are made in factories or have added ingredients, you're giving your brain and your body more efficient fuel that will help your mental health. And so this can start small. And I know a lot of people, you know, if you're not used to eating whole foods, they taste weird. Like it's an adjustment. And some people say like it costs more money. So just some strategies for that. You know, if you go to a store like Aldi, for example, you can get really clean foods like pre-prepared salads that you don't have to like really make. You know, things like some prepared meals in the frozen food section that don't have as much junk in them, that are really just like vegetables that are in proteins that are cut up for you. They also have things like freeze-dried fruit and freeze-dried veggies. So if you're not used to like the texture of fruits and vegetables, that's often like a really great way to start, is like with freeze-dried, because it's closer to the farm than say, you know, like strawberry candy, right? Like having or you know, Twizzlers versus having freeze-dried strawberries, it's going to do a very different thing to your body. And so you know, I highly recommend just sampling it, just kind of dipping in, making, you know, smoothies with frozen bananas and some, you know, peanut butter powder, or some spinach and almond milk, can really feel life-giving versus making you kind of feel sick afterward. And it's amazing what it can do for your brain and your mental health. All right, so there you go. There's my pitch for Whole Foods. And you know, there's this really wonderful, there's a wonderful empowerment coach in Ithaca, New York, named Jaya, the trust coach. She's a trust coach. And she wrote a book called Scooch, right? And I think this is a powerful, powerful concept where, you know, oftentimes we say like, oh, we have to go on a diet, or, oh, we have to like go all in on this new way of eating, or this new strategy for meditation, or this new whatever, right? It's not always sustainable or realistic. So if we can scooch, just make like a tiny little bit of progress each day, you're going to make such huge progress in the long run, and it's going to be at a sustainable pace, right? So instead of like dumping out all the food in your cabinets and saying like, okay, I'm just going to eat whole foods, like for some people maybe that would work, but maybe you scooch by like trying one new freeze-dried fruit or vegetable, right? Or maybe you scooch by grabbing that banana one day instead of that, you know, candy bar or granola bar, right? Because you're going as close to the farm as you can. So just remember that concept of scooch. It can be for any kind of new thing that you're trying to include in your life, that you want to make a long-term habit. Okay. All right, let's keep rolling. Joseph, did you have feedback on that?
Oh, I agree with you.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about reduced screen time. So we know that anxiety and depression are correlated with high levels of screen time. This is a quote from Dr. Scallon. The content on the screen matters just as much as the amount of time spent on them, right? So this includes things like social media, right? Like we feel like, oh, we're connecting with friends, but a lot of the research says that it's actually not so super helpful for me, because the social media can often very much be a highlights reel where people are putting on their very best. They're showing the thing that they're most excited about, or spinning their reality in a way that makes it look super fun or easy or simple or wonderful. But somebody said something recently that really struck me, is that everybody smiles for the camera, right? So what's going on behind that smile is often very, very different than what you might assume from Insta, from Facebook, from Snap, from Twitter, whatever. So be super conscious about your screen time. and think about, okay, what am I doing here that's life-giving versus life-sucking, right? How am I feeling after I use this thing, compared to something that I know is giving me joy, right? And the other really critical piece here is that when we have devices, we need to make sure that we remember that we're the ones that are in charge, right? And so setting screen time limits for ourselves can help us remind ourselves that we're in charge, right? Because we're the ones that are setting those limits. So oftentimes, I know at least with the iPhones, you can set different time limits for different categories of apps or just for your screen in general. So if I don't feel good when I'm on social media. I feel depressed and I compare myself to other people. This isn't being very helpful to me. What you can do is, instead of, again, going cold turkey, you're scooching, right? So maybe if you spend 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day on social media, you cut it down by 30 minutes and you set something in your settings that actually turns you off, like you can't open Facebook or Insta or whatever after that. And if you want to figure out how to do that, YouTube it. YouTube, depending on what phone you have, depending on what app you want to limit, just YouTube, like how to set time limits on blank app on blank device. And there are plenty of YouTubers out there that will show you exactly how to do that. And you can pause and play in order to have that feedback as you're programming your phone. And then again, when you're looking at content, be really conscious. There was somebody that I was working with who was just doing a lot of doom scrolling. If you heard of that term, it's just reading a lot of news. And remember that news agencies are paid for your clicks. And so what they're trying to do is create a panic response so that you need to react in a panic way and click. That's how they make money, right? And so, extreme representation of news, and really reinforcing negative things that are happening in the world is toxic and is something that, even 20 years ago just didn't exist to the same amount, because we didn't have these machines in our hands with the clicks being the thing that make the money, right? So just be thinking about those sources before, again, you let the media rule your life. Your job is for you to rule the media in your life. Okay.
Perfect.
With, you need news intake. Think about an efficient way to get factual news, but not all day long, right? Because your cortisol levels, the fight, flight, or freeze chemicals in your brain, are constantly being triggered if you're constantly seeing that doom scroll, if you're getting alerts about chaos happening in the world all the time. Okay. When this person that I consult with greatly reduced their exposure to news, their mental health improved within a week and a half. It was that noticeable. Not that they're trying to be irresponsible and not understand what's going on in the world, but just be super conscious of how much and how frequently and what sources, avoiding extreme sources as well. Okay, so we have whole foods, we have reduced screen time. What's next? Let's talk about exercise. And this is, of course, all things that you've been told before, right? But what we're trying to share here is that it doesn't need to be all or nothing. It's not like you're a failure if you like don't jump into some like perfect exercise routine and join a gym and go every day. That's not the point here. Joseph, I think if you mute yourself, we won't get that like
Oh,
some reason. Okay, all right, thank you. So this is just a little quote from a Harvard study. Running for 15 minutes a day or walking for an hour reduces the risk of major depression by 26%, over a quarter of folks. So in addition to relieving depression symptoms, research also shows that maintaining an exercise schedule can prevent you from relapsing, right? So if you're in a better mental health state and you have opportunities to exercise, it's going to help you stay in that state, okay? So this is where those shoulds come in, right? We say, oh, I should go to the gym. I should walk. Oh, I signed up for the exercise app. I should use it. The goal is not to live a life of shoulds. It's not sustainable. It just builds shame. Nobody needs to live life in shame, right? Our goal is to create a sustainable, meaningful life. And sometimes that means getting really creative. So, for example, maybe you really like doing interactive video games. Maybe you like virtual reality. And so finding ways to move your body through virtual reality is what works for you. Maybe you are a really social person. So scheduling something regularly to walk with friends or to meet up for some kind of dance class with other people is what's going to be motivating, because it's not moving your body that's motivating, it's hanging out with your people that's motivating, right? For me, it's really about making it part of my daily routine that's non-negotiable. And some of my other workshops, I talk about coming up with your big ideals, like the things that are most important to you, your values, right? So maybe that's health, maybe that's faith, maybe that's community or nature or education, right? But if you choose, to be active, to be healthy, if that is one of your life values, then you've already made the decision to be healthy. So then when you have the choice of like a cupcake or like some stir-fried vegetables, you've already made the choice. The choice isn't there for you to make anymore. You've already decided to be healthy, so you're going for like the actual real food. The same is true for exercise. Like I've made a commitment to do yoga every day. I started it because after the head injury, I was running into walls. Like I did not have balance. I had very poor depth perception. I had to build it up again, and I wanted to do it in a meaningful way. So I started practicing yoga every day, and now it's a non-negotiable. Like the day doesn't end until I do yoga. Most of the time it's first thing in the morning, so I don't even have to make the decision of when to do it. It's just already done before the day continues. And sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 20 minutes. There's a million YouTube videos of yoga. You don't need to go to a studio. You don't need to sign up for fancy platforms or courses. It's really about finding that thing for you. And, I know we talked about media, right? And like the intentional use of media. And so how do you leverage media to actually be helpful, right? And this is one of these things. In our Open the Lid groups for neurodivergent people and allies, teens through adults, every Friday we have a dance party, a virtual dance party. And so again, it's getting together as a community, it's listening to music, it's being exposed to different kinds of music, different kinds of dancing. And it is so incredible what kind of resources are on YouTube in terms of ways to move your body. Anything from like how to do CrossFit at home to how to do salsa dancing to African dancing from people in Africa, right? Like cost doesn't need to be a factor. Transportation doesn't need to be a factor. Time doesn't need to be a factor. The factor is you have this one beautiful body. It is the vessel to your beautiful soul and brain. And so what ways are you going to take care of it so that your body and your brain can work at maximum joy and steadiness and efficiency? That's what we're looking for, right? So whether it's taking the stairs instead of the elevator, whether it's parking further away in the parking lot, whether it's walking those blocks instead of taking that extra transfer on the train, whether it's popping on YouTube as soon as you roll out of bed for some kind of movement, whether it's Tai Chi or Pilates or yoga or dance, or some kind of core work. Go ahead and just scooch toward it. Try it on Thursday mornings and just see how that goes, and then add another day, right? And also give yourself permission to say, I can do this for 6 weeks, right? Like creating a habit and not saying like, oh, I'm a victim to this routine that I must do. That's not sustainable, right? Let's create something that you can do over time. Okay. Let's talk about this thing called forest bathing. So forest bathing is from Japan, at least this particular way of looking at it. And it's called Shinrin Yoku. And the idea is that just being in nature causes immediate changes to the way your brain is functioning. There are ways that it relaxes the stress portion of your brain. It releases positive hormones. People feel less sad, angry, and anxious. It helps to avoid stress and burnout. It aids in fighting depression and anxiety. It boosts immunity. It lessens the days of illness. There's faster recovery from injury or surgery. It increases focus, concentration, and memory. Like, how can you not want all of those things, right? So for some people, you just say like, nature is not for me. Even just, again, like having a virtual reality of being in nature or watching nature on YouTube or listening to nature sounds can move you toward some of these benefits. I also recommend, if you're not used to being in nature, making it something that you do with a friend, or being on a call with somebody that you love while you're in nature, just to get used to the routine of it. The goal of traditional Japanese forest bathing is something I'm going to actually show. There's a little video that I'm going to share with you here. Because again, I think for many people, this might be a new concept, that this is like actually a thing, and actually a thing that can change your life. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone so that you can hear. So I'd just like to acknowledge this source here. This film was by Nitin Das from healingforce.org. And I'm grateful for their contribution. Okay. So I didn't want to talk during that film because I really wanted you to have that experience of some of those nature sounds and that soothing experience of birds and water. And again, the concept is really simple and radical at the same time, right? If you're doing true forest bathing, you're not on your devices listening to a podcast, right? Like you're being really present to what's going on around you. And as they were saying in this video, it's about tuning into your senses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of different mindfulness techniques. But the idea is that when you're really, really conscious about like, what are you hearing? And you're looking for hearing, what are you seeing? And you're looking for things that you see. Life becomes more technicolor and it helps you become very much in the present moment, which can help when you're awfulizing is what I call like just like spinning out of control, like, oh my gosh, what's the worst case scenario? How am I going to handle it? How am I going to live through it? And also futurizing, like, what's going to happen? This is going to be horrible, right? Being present to your senses, to what am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? What am I feeling? Brings you back into your body and takes you away from spinning about the past or spinning about the future. Okay, we're moving here, folks. Let's see. Oops. Bear with me. Okay. Here we go. Another great strategy that has a lot of research backing it is the idea of being conscious of gratitude, right? There's somebody that had this great speech once that was talking about if you decide to look for red cars, you will find more red cars than you have ever seen in your life, because that's what you're putting your attention on. The gratitude journal is the same idea. When you decide to look for things that are going right in your life, you will find more things than you've ever found before that are really powerful and beautiful in your life, right? So some people say, oh, journaling is not for me. I get it. One thing you can do, there are apps to record your gratitude. You can write it in notes on your phone. You can dictate it into your phone, like, hey, Siri, make a note. I'm grateful for, oh, here, my phone's doing that now, right? Grateful for the warm sunshine on my face today, right? Another thing that some people do is just have some scrap paper around and write one thing down, maybe at dinner, that they're grateful for, put it in a jar, and then read it on New Year's Eve every year, right? So that there's this motivating, like you're writing down things you're grateful for, and then there's this way to celebrate it and kind of like sum up the year and read 365 things you're grateful for at the end of the year. So again, it's just whatever is going to work for you to scooch toward keeping the focus on finding the positive. Okay, because again, whether it's doom scrolling or just looking at like the lists of to-dos in your life, it's easy to find ways to be upset. It's easy to find ways to feel overwhelmed. When you spend time focusing on gratitude, it helps shift the way your brain is looking at the world. Okay. Okay. So here are some other ways that folks support mental health, and that's through faith practices. Different people, have very strong opinions about faith practices. From my educational perspective, what seems to be helpful is creating a time of reflection, creating a time of learning different perspectives that are bigger than you, creating an opportunity to help others, that helping others actually increases your mental health. It's important to also breathe as a group, that, you know, a lot of faith practices have unified breathing through unison prayer, through singing, through mantra. And it's actually that unified breath that can reduce your heart rate, and increase peace of mind. Remember that you have a right to be part of a welcoming community, that there are often faith practices and faith communities that can cause extra stress, that can be exclusive, that can be harmful, that can be super judgmental. So you have a choice to find a faith practice that is inclusive and safe and supportive around kind people, okay? Because it's a very specific kind of faith practice that's going to improve the quality of your life. One other element in a positive, supportive faith community is that idea of togetherness, like that you're not in this life alone, you know, and whether that's, you know, bringing each other food when somebody's had surgery, or just somebody asking you, how's your family doing? You know, being part of a faith community helps you remember that you have this human net of connection. And so when you go to that place of despair, you can say, hey, you know, I'm in this rough place, but I know there's this like web of people who are there to back me up, you know. And what's really nice, again, about healthy faith communities is that there's often a very wide range of ages and occupations and backgrounds, socioeconomics. So it helps also kind of bring a broader perspective to your life. If you're only around a certain age or a certain kind of people, sometimes you can get myopic, like things look very like from one perspective. And so seeing the world through the lens of a 5-year-old running by you, through an elder sitting next to you, can help bring perspective and peace to your life. Okay. And that's another thing that you can find, you know, through faith practices. Okay. Let's see. There are just incredible resources for meditation and mindfulness. This is an example of the Insight Timer app that is free. Some people just like some background music. Some people like guided meditation where they talk you through it. You can do this for 5 minutes. You can do this for an hour. You can do this to help you sleep. Again, it's free and an incredible resource for people that are just kind of dipping their toes into meditation. We're talking about different strategies and supports for meditation. So another meditation app is called Oak. A lot of people like Oak. There's one called 10% Happier. There's a really popular app called Headspace. And then there's also one called Bright Mind, and this is through Unified Mindfulness. And I just want to talk about this specific technique because it's a bit different than the other strategies that they have for meditation. And the idea of unified mindfulness kind of goes back to when we were talking about forest bathing. And the idea here is that you don't have to be a monk on a mountaintop to be a meditator, right? The idea is like tending toward quiet, not being perfectly thought free. And so unified mindfulness talks about focusing on your senses instead of like focusing on your breath, which doesn't always work for people. It does. And if it does for you, that's great. But for some people, it doesn't work. And so the idea is that you pick your senses. And if you're feeling like overwhelmed by sound, you might want to focus on what you're seeing. And you physically, literally say, see, 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 as you're looking around and noting the things that your eyes are looking at. Okay. And you can whisper it under your breath or say it silently if you absolutely must need to, right? This is great when you're on the train, when you're driving. It's a way of staying in this very, very moment while you're doing other things, while you're doing the dishes, while you're folding laundry. Okay. If you're really overwhelmed by visuals, right, that like there's just so much chaos around, you might want to tune into what you hear, and you literally say here, 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 as I can hear my computer humming, as I hear construction sounds, as I hear my own voice, I can say here, here, here. If you're having overwhelming feelings, they're spinning out of control, you can go from feeling in, like your internal feelings in your brain and your heart and your body, to the idea of feeling out, right? And what that means is like physically feeling the temperature of the air on your skin, your sleeve on your arm, your feet on the floor, your body in the chair, right? So what you're doing is taking from the feelings that are overwhelming in your brain, and you're using that same muscle of noticing to notice things that aren't charged with emotion, that are just simply observations, right? I'm feeling this cold glass in my hand. I'm feeling the hair on the back of my neck. All right. It's giving you different strategies for really being in the moment, not worrying about focusing on breath, just being so present to the world around you, and therefore this very moment. Okay. So you can check out Bright Mind, the app, or unifiedmindfulness.com. They'll both get you to some of that kind of different way of thinking about meditation. There's also, just as a side note, on my YouTube channel, and Open the Lid, the YouTube channel, I also share some other kinds of meditation and other kinds of breathing. And the videos are really short. So check out Open the Lid on YouTube and check out some of those just guided strategies and meditations, or resources for mindfulness. Okay, here we go. Number 9, mantras, affirmations. A lot of times we have these tapes playing in our head, these records of like, I'm awful, I'm a failure, I can't do this, I'm overwhelmed, it's too much. So our job is to help change the tape, right? And you can do this by saying something until you believe it. Like, I am loved, or I'm doing the best I can, right? And another way to do this, if it just feels like too insincere to say I'm loved, like, I don't feel loved, how is this, like, or I'm doing the best I can. So for example, what you can do is hold both. You can use the power of and. So you could say, I feel like a terrible parent, and I'm doing the best I can. Like, that can be your affirmation. Like, I am a total failure at this, and I'm not giving up. All right. So again, for folks that are just like, that feels too fake to say, like, I am powerful, I am beautiful, it's okay to use and. It's okay to say, I feel useless, and I know that I actually have something to give this world, right? Okay. Let's see. There's also something called EFT. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. It's based on Chinese meridians, and also the idea of mantra or affirmations. And it looks a little weird at first. Again, it's a resource you can use on YouTube. It's really nice because you don't have to do it with a therapist. It's free. It can help for anything from pain to anxiety, to dealing with interpersonal situations. And the idea is that you're saying, like, even though I'm feeling overwhelmed, I love myself, right? Even though this day feels super, super daunting, I trust myself, right? And so you're saying these things, but you're saying it while you're tapping different points on your body. And so what that does is it integrates your ideas into your body. So we are just making sure that to share lots and lots of resources. We have a couple more minutes. I'm going to share a couple more things. Joseph, do we have till 3? Yeah. Okay, great. So again, if you are having trouble with anxiety, with depression, with overwhelm, with a cold, with money stuff, with body issues, or a hard time eating healthy foods, right? You can actually just like YouTube it, like EFT for exercise, EFT for body image, EFT for anxiety. And there'll be people that will guide you through this process on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but I had like major anxiety before the 2020 elections, like major anxiety, like woke up with panic attacks. And so using EFT was the way that I got out of bed in the morning. And within about 5 minutes, I was at a place where I could go on with my day. So highly recommend. Okay, we're getting near the end of this. Let's also talk about therapy. Some people, you know, again, I'm not a therapist. I highly recommend therapy. The trick is to find a good match, right? You can go to a terrible therapist and it can be really detrimental. Don't think you need to go to somebody just because they're the first person you signed up with. It's kind of like dating. You need to find a good match, okay? So there are lots of different kinds of talk therapy. There's also things like art therapy and music therapy that you can tap into. One kind of therapy, if you've experienced a lot of trauma, is something called EMDR. And if you just Google EMDR providers, there is a whole website that says what kind of insurance you have, where you live, whether they do it virtually. And you can find people that are trained in this specific technique to help you take trauma from the fight, flight, or freeze part of your brain to the part of your brain that can integrate trauma and help you move through it. Okay. There's also something called cognitive behavioral therapy that helps replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts in a very structured way over like 10 sessions. So yes, there's traditional talk therapy, but then there's also different kinds of therapies that help you move through negative thinking, anxiety, and trauma in really specific ways. Remember, it's like dating, find the right fit. Okay, there are also lots of herbs and medications, and this is something you absolutely have to talk to your primary provider about, to your doctor about. Oftentimes your doctor might not know about some alternative things like L-theanine, which is an amino acid found in green tea that often helps with mood stabilization. Ashwagandha is another thing. If you're having panic attacks, there's something called Rescue Remedy that's a homeopathic support. So, you know, while a lot of people are hesitant to try medications, there are a lot of alternative supports and herbal supplements that have proven to be helpful for many people, that you can research, that you can ask your primary care provider about, just as a way to support your mental health. Sometimes medication is the way to go. You know, if you had diabetes, you wouldn't like not give yourself insulin, right? It's the chemistry set of your body. And so sometimes, you know, like our bodies weren't actually made, our brains weren't made for this like 21st century onslaught of information and hyperfunctioning. And so some brain systems and brain chemistry sets can handle it. And some really need like chemical support, right? And it doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't make you less than. It just means at this point in your life, you need some chemical support to be able to function and live your best, most meaningful life. So it is much, much healthier to create support through regulated medication than to dive into other addictions, such as heavy drug use, alcohol, porn, you know, food, junk food. So owning that you need that chemical support and getting it is a way of really self-regulating and honoring your body, right? Okay, 2 minutes. I want you to take some time and pause this video, write down some of the strategies you're going to try and your personal plan for implementing them. Maybe you're just going to use the word "and," you know, maybe you're going to look up EFT the next time you're freaking out. Maybe you're going to like try some freeze-dried fruit. Like, just what's the plan, right? And then I also just want to encourage folks to reach out to Open the Lid if you are at all wanting some extra support, wanting to be part of a community of support for folks with developmental differences. Open the Lid is covered through Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. So there are ways to connect that way. You can also follow Open the Lid through social media, one of like, you know, a healthier way to do it. Check out the YouTube channel, try out some of those guided meditations. And you are always, always welcome to contact me to set up free consults. And I am here as a way to help you live your very best life and provide even more tools to create meaning. So thanks so much for this time. It's been a true honor. And thanks again for showing up for yourself. It's a gift that
Thank you, Lydia. Well, I think Jessica and I learned a lot. And by the way, that nature bathing, I do a lot of that since I'm a bird watcher. I meditate when I look at the birds, sit there for maybe 2 or 3 hours, watch what they're doing, how they build the house and things like that. That always inspires me. It makes me happier when I see something that I've never seen before.
Absolutely. That's really
Yes.
cool. Thanks for that feedback.
And when I'm not at work, I try to stay off my computers and read an actual paper book or go for a walk or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Or stay
adding
off
that
my phone.
variety to your life, right? Like making a good meal, taking a walk, calling a friend. Yeah, that can
Absolutely.
all really increase your mental health. That's awesome. Thanks.
And then that helps too.
Yeah.
And having a nap helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. Enough sleep is super critical. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Jessica, do you have any questions?
I don't, Lydia. I just want to say thank you again. Some of these tips I shared with Joseph beforehand, you know, that these were the ways that I like to practice self-care and to things that help me with my own mental health. So some of the new ones I'm definitely going to check out because there's some that I've not heard of. So I'm excited and thank you again.